Carissa. I have two of my staff members here that will also be joining in from time to time. Their names are Burgundy and Sarah. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull up our PowerPoint of what we're going to go through and get started. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A section, and I will get to those as soon as possible. Oops. All right, so here we go. Today I thought it would be really important to focus on the mental health and well-being of ourselves and also our staff members and parents and clients to best prepare each of us upon reopening whenever that is. So that's what we'll be talking about today. The first thing that I wanted to do as a group, or just you by yourself tuned in at home, to just quickly do a self check-in. And I wanted to start out with this because I feel like it's really important that we take time to honor ourselves during this experience and honor the different varying emotions that we are all encountering at different times. And I think through that, when we can honor ourselves, that helps us find acceptance and peace and the silver linings, and then we can move forward and find a way to thrive and survive. Before we do our self-check-in that Burgundy's going to guide us through, I wanted to briefly touch base on the stages of grief. I don't know how each of you are personally experiencing all of this, but I know for me as an individual, I feel like I have gone through the stages of grief more than once as things continue to evolve and change. And so I just thought that that would be really important to recognize and remember, and know that this is a normal part of our process when we are experiencing such dramatic life changes. Before we do our check-in, I wanted to share just a little bit about my personal experience and the stages of grief. So the first thing that I experienced was initial shock and not really understanding what was happening in our society and in our world. And then once things started changing, there was a lot of anger and sadness and denial. And I'm sorry if I get emotional. And so that was another stage. And then I started questioning things, trying to figure out what the next steps were going to be, talking to other people, connecting with them. I think our social media groups have been incredible as far as supporting each of us as club owners and instructors and managers. So that was another stage of me being ready to reach out to other people and collaborate. What are you doing? How are you handling this? And then going through more emotions, but more acceptance of, okay, this is our new reality. And then being able to find a place within my mental clarity to think about things in a new way and come out of this finding the positives. So Teacher Burgundy is here, and she specializes in yoga and mindfulness and meditation. So we wanted to just do a quick grounding exercise with you to check in and kind of just find your calm. So I'm just going to slide this over to Burgundy. And there she goes.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got 3 little teachers sitting in a row here, so we're sharing our space. We're just going to do a little bit of a grounding just from the seat that you're sitting in, and you can do this throughout the day at your home or in your car. We've been taking a couple of timeouts or rest periods. We've been calling them meditation moments. So this is something that if it hasn't already been introduced to your life or your practice, can be very helpful over time if you commit to setting moments aside regularly or throughout your day. In fact, when I first started doing this, it was actually easier for me to consider them rewards rather than a meditation or yoga or exercise. You know, you get to thinking about work and you think, oh, that's a personal thing. Maybe I don't need that now, or let me do my 8 hours of work first. And a friend of mine had actually said, oh, well, I have this strategy and I give myself rewards throughout the day. And maybe your reward is not a breathing exercise, but maybe it's a sandwich you're having for lunch or your favorite coffee or whatever those things are. So taking the timeouts from the time that we wake up until the time that we go to bed to check in with ourselves so that those overwhelming feelings and emotions don't surprise us so much and we're more aware of how we are in the current moment. So a couple of just really simple adjustments that we can make to just make sure that we're all here. Physically, our bodies are here, but let's try to settle in our minds a little bit better. So if you're comfortable, uncross your legs and put your feet flat on the floor. So this already initiates a type of grounding. Your feet are resting on the earth, letting the earth hold you, maybe wiggle your toes. And then for your hands, maybe stretch out your hands, wiggle your fingers a little bit, get some blood flowing. And then we'll take our thumb and our pointer finger to make a circle and the other 3 fingers together. And then we'll flip so the back of your palms is resting on your knees or somewhere on your upper thigh. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And we're just gonna take a couple of moments here to bring in some stillness, some calmness, some relaxation. So wherever you are right now with your breath, go ahead and take a big inhale. Slight pause at the top and exhale, let it go. And as I continue to talk, continue to take these big breaths in, slight pause, and a big breath out. And depending on our anxiety or our state of being or our ability to stay hydrated, you may notice that your breaths are shaky or short, or maybe they're very long. Maybe immediately the first breath is very calming. You may notice a wrinkle in your eyebrows that you could relax. Maybe you're holding your jaw. So as you think of these different parts of your body or mind or face, you start to settle in a little bit more. Maybe you ease back, adjust back in your seat. I want to invite you on a journey that starts with a single step. To be the best equipped for this journey, you will need a lightness of heart and the realization that even though what you left behind is something you found safe, familiar, or comforting, you may now relax in the joy and the truth that there is an element to this journey you are embarking upon that is unknown. Just like a butterfly leaves the chrysalis behind, when it is time to spread its wings, newly formed wings, so too are you ready to leave behind what once was and embark upon what is more appropriate for you at this time. I invite you on a journey that starts with a single step. Be well. Namaste. Thank you everyone for taking this moment with me. And again, these are just small adjustments that you can do or moments that you can take throughout your day to find ease and comfort. Let's go back to Carissa.
Thank you so much, Burgundy. That was amazing and reminded me of how much I need to be taking these meditation moments myself. So I hope that that felt good. I know I definitely could feel a new sense of calm come over me after going through that with her. And we are recording this, so you guys will all have access to this video, and you can replay that and access it at any time that you wish. So let's move on. I wanted to next talk about trauma and be thinking about re-entering our lives and our businesses, starting to work with the public again, and just knowing that everybody has had a different experience in this, and some people have been dramatically impacted, other people less impacted, but I expect that some people will come out of this experience feeling traumatized in one way or another, which is why I feel like it's very important that we are doing everything we can to take care of ourselves, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we can't take care of our team, our students, and our clients. This is just a little visual to help remind us about the real effects of trauma. And I think it's important, this little visual will come up a couple more times, because I really want this to be ingrained in our brains so that we know what these different signs or effects of trauma are, and we can better recognize what our students, staff, and clients might be experiencing, and then have coping skills and strategies to help support our clients and families the best way that we can. I know that for me personally, when I have experienced traumas in the past, flashbacks have been something. I think that might be an experience that a lot of us might be able to relate to moving forward, of, especially re-entering your gym and seeing it in a space that you're not used to, the format, we're working out our social distancing spaces, and just having flashbacks that, oh my gosh, my life used to be normal, and now when I look at my gym, it's not the same. I think that feeling that experience is normal, and again, we should validate that and try not to block it. Some people might experience panic attacks or just a general sense of feeling overwhelmed. Some people might go into substance abuse to cope. Trauma can often affect our memory, which I'll talk a little bit more about in some upcoming slides. Depression will be another thing that I will want us to look out for as a team as we reopen, and just expecting people in the public, children and adults, to possibly be more irritable than normal, and just be at a different emotional state that we are used to, and that's okay. It's not permanent, and that we can all work through this together. These are some things that I thought about with regards to trauma and just the general public of what people might be experiencing. Domestic violence has significantly risen since all of the stay-at-home orders were put in place. And in my opinion, domestic violence can be a very invisible problem. And so when we have families re-entering our facilities, there's no way for us to tell what parents or families might have been in unsafe situations. And so I just want that to just be in the back of our minds as we start interacting again, remembering that this has been a very shocking life disruption for many people, especially parents having to manage a work life and raising their family at home. Many children have had their education ripped away from them, or switching over to the virtual learning, as well as therapy services or any other additional family supports. So I think just that in itself can be traumatic for families. when I have been talking to many of our parents just via Zoom or over the phone or email, a lot of our families are expressing that their children are really struggling with the virtual aspect of learning, and they feel like they would like to give up or that it's hopeless, it's not going to work. And so just knowing that that is a very traumatic experience for some families, and that they're going to be feeling a lot of different emotions coming back into our gym. Also, the trauma behind having a fear of our safety and our health. That's been really, I think there's a lot of fear going around. We're afraid to leave our homes. We're afraid to go into the grocery store. A lot of people are going to be afraid to come back into the gym. And I think that's valid, but we can move past that. And also just having our overall health and well-being compromised in a way that we cannot control can be a new traumatic experience. Also, if anybody has lost a loved one during our shutdowns, whether that is actually to the illness of COVID, or maybe a family member has passed away and that person was not able to see their family member due to the stay-at-home orders. I think we need to really be empathetic and sympathetic to that. And then just also the trauma behind having to be socially isolated for such a long duration of time. It's gonna feel differently when our social lives start coming back to normal, because it's not going to be the same, and that can feel traumatizing. Just to share my personal experience related to trauma in this, and I'm sure many people can relate, but there's the fear, that initial fear when we were all mandated to shut down, of potentially losing our businesses. And I know that some people in our industry, or just many people, no matter what industry, have had to make that really tough decision of closing their business or closing a location of their business. And for me, because I love what I do, and I know probably every single one of you feels the same way, that fear was very real and very hard to cope with. And then just rethinking, okay, if I can't have a business, what does my career look like? What do I go back to school? Do I do this? Just having to go through all of those thoughts of how am I going to piece my business and my life back together after this? What is that going to look like? So that's one thing that I've been coping with. Grieving for a loved one during all of this. One of my close friends got diagnosed with cancer, and that's been really challenging to not get to see her and hug her and give her the physical and emotional support that I'm used to. Having a weakened support system overall due to social distancing. I know for me in my life, this has affected my friendships. I've grown closer with some people, and I've also grown farther apart from some people. And that's challenging in itself. And actually, I reached out to a friend who I was feeling that withdrawal from. And once I got some more information, I just realized that he's experiencing his own trauma. And the way he's handling that is to withdraw, and that's okay, and it's not personal. But just learning how to accept and understand all of these changes within our social realms or our family dynamics has been something I didn't expect. Also, just grieving the financial losses that a lot of us have endured over this time and likely are still enduring. And then just grieving all of the changes that take place, whether that's overall over the course of the last 3 months or the day-to-day changes that happen. I know very early on things were changing almost hourly, and once I'm able to sit down and think about all of that and kind of process, I've been finding times to just allow myself to grieve. If I need to sit on the couch and cry, that's okay. And just honoring and respecting that we've all went through a lot, and it's okay to grieve and let ourselves release all of these feelings so that we can put ourselves back together and get into a state of healing and move forward in our lives. Some things to think about as far as our clients, and when I say clients, I mean parents or caregivers. Again, just understanding that some people might be re-entering your facility and have been living in an unsafe environment for the last couple months that they were not able to escape. And also with that comes child abuse, whether our students have witnessed domestic violence towards a family member in the home, or they are actually a victim of child abuse. Again, it's really hard to identify abuse often, but I think it's important that we talk about that. Don't turn a blind eye to that. Know the signs of abuse and just be ready and prepared to observe the state that our families and students are in as they come back to the gym. Also, many parents have lost their jobs and income, and that can be incredibly stressful, especially if you're supporting children. The stress of at-home schooling has been very, very challenging for a lot of parents. Fear of families' safety, meaning if I bring my child, to the grocery store, if I go to the grocery store and possibly have exposure to COVID, am I, going to bring that back home and put my child's safety at risk? I think I'm not a parent personally, but I would imagine that many families are experiencing a new wave of how do I keep my babies or children safe? And then just an overall sense of feeling overwhelmed and stressed. So I expect, that's what I expect in the state of mind for many of our clients. And then I just wanted to talk about the children as well, as far as people with all of these changes in routines, children will likely experience regression, whether that is academic or social or emotional. There's going to be some regression going on with all of the changes in routines that have happened. I anticipate that many of our students returning will be experiencing a new level of dysregulation or possibly aggression. And then also trying to reintegrate back into a social environment with new social boundaries after being isolated for a prolonged period of time. So how do we best serve our families when they are ready to return? I think the first place we start is prioritizing our self-care, our health, and our wellness. And I really like the suggestion that Burgundy brought up about using that as a self-reward and not thinking of it as another thing you need to do. This is how we're going to stay healthy, and just prioritizing that throughout our day. One strategy that I have used in the past is just setting a timer for maybe every hour or every 2 hours throughout my workday, and just setting aside 5 minutes of when I hear that timer, it's my self-care time or my self-reward time to fill my cup back up so that I can return and keep doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing. Additionally, I think it's important to ask questions with the people that are around you, your staff, your parents, your students, and just ask them simply, how are you doing? To just gain better insight on how they as an individual have been impacted, and through learning their experience, we'll be able to better support them in our facilities. And then also just modeling our best self. And that's where the prioritizing self-care is so, so important, that we can't show our best selves if we aren't taking time to do what's best for us. And we'll talk about some ideas of specific self-care strategies. But I also wanted to just say that when me and my team come back in, I will have the expectation that we are showing our best self. We're greeting everybody with a happy face. We are very cheerful and enthusiastic and positive. Even if we're not feeling that inside, we're gonna fake it until we make it through this to our clients and show them. You know, I feel like it's when our clients are in our facility and our students are in our facility, whether or not we're feeling good inside, it's our job to show our best selves and be as strong as we possibly can for the communities that we serve. Here are just some really basic examples of ways to take care of yourself. Exercise is really big, and I know that that's been hard at home, but even just doing short, 5 to 10 minute movement breaks throughout your day can be really helpful. You don't need to feel like you put pressure on yourself to get a whole workout in, but just implementing some sort of movement to give your body that exercise daily is so, so important for your self-care. Also, finding healthy outlets for your own personal stress management and prioritizing your personal health through all of this. And the last one, which I feel is incredibly important, is to continue to be socially responsible as services start opening up. So I'm here in Oregon, and my county that I live in is close to opening up, but we have not opened up, but every other county surrounding us has reopened. And there's been issues of people, driving to other cities to get to go to different stores or restaurants that are approved for opening. But I think that we all, because we work with the public, have a social responsibility to keep up with the social restrictions that we are being asked to do. So I will be asking my team and staff when we return back to work that in your personal lives, you are still using all of the hygiene, following all of the guidelines that the CDC is putting out. And so reminding our team and our staffs that, when you leave the gym and you have to go to the grocery store, like, remember to keep your mask on. And as things reopen, I think that we're all really anxious to get back and enjoy some of the activities that we love. I used to love going to get pedicures, and I used to love to go out to dinner. But taking that slow, and just knowing that it might not be safe for you as somebody who serves the public to be putting yourselves in those situations as we reopen. So just be responsible, be careful, and do everything that you can to continue to protect yourself. Some things that we wanted to explain, Burgundy and I, about specific self-care strategies would include making just really easy things that we can all do. But I think that when we're in a state of feeling overwhelmed, it can be hard to remember all of these things, but just keeping yourself hydrated, set a drinking cup, or I've got my cup right here. But also avoiding foods that could dehydrate you, fill your body up with healthy foods and things that make you feel good. Taking a moment for positive self-talk within yourself and recognizing the dialogues that you're having with yourself. If you find yourself going into a negative dialogue, being able to recognize that and reversing that into some positive self-talk. And I'll let Burgundy talk just a little bit about using a mantra or a prayer as a self-care strategy.
Thanks, guys. Really, Chris, I need some water right now. Thanks for staying with us. For those of you who are already incorporating any kind of healthy outlets, please share those with your friends, whether it's Instagram or a phone conversation. It's amazing how many tricks and tools I found online just in the last 2 months of maybe, oh, I was doing that, but now I'm not doing that anymore. So we just went with it's probably 7 ideas here that are super basic that you could start today, tomorrow, right now. And then again, of course, this might be a tool that you take to your team or bring to a meeting to get interest and ideas from other people that are on your team. Taking a moment for positive self-talk sounds super simple, not that simple. Those people who know me and who I've worked with know that I try to be a really positive person, and it's so much easier for me to be in support of someone else than it is for myself. And I've learned that through journaling because, I'll write or record down a couple of days worth of entries and then go back and read it and find, oh gosh, there were so many negative things or worries and doubts and fears that I put in there. And even just 4 or 5 days later, I don't feel that way anymore. Or it's a reminder to myself that maybe I didn't realize I was feeling that way. And now 4 days later, as quick as that came, I'm not feeling that way anymore. So that's a really good way to collect insight about yourself. A lot of times, as a manager or a parent or a caregiver or a provider or a friend, we reach out and try to do for others more than we think to do for ourselves. And like Carissa was saying during this transition of, times and things, it's really made the basics really important. Hand washing, we all should know that, should do that, should be thorough about that as we transition buildings, facilities, rooms, tasks, all those things. So I think this is a really great introduction to, some new strategies for all of us and for health and good and nature. And we've seen some of that stuff come to light. So building confidence through journaling, that has really worked really well for me. Many years ago, I set out on a mission to, realize and know that my confidence was really low. And that was something that only I knew or close, very observant friends and mentors could see. But I was accustomed very much to the fake it till you make it. And I do really, really, really enjoy other people. And so it's super easy for me once I'm outside of myself to be in that state where I'm not faking it. I'm really positive. I'm really glad to see your face, and I'm glad to know, your story and hear what you're going through. And for me, that connection with community is why we're all here on this earth together. But one of the best ways that I finally started gaining some traction with gaining confidence was just setting tiny little goals for myself every day. And it would literally turn, it sounds silly, but it turned into yeah, I did that. I drank 100 ounces of water today, or I took the dog for a walk 3 times. And I convinced myself, oh, it's for the dog. But no, that was 3 times I got out and walked 20 minutes. Felt really good, not just that evening when I went to bed, but also the next day, and it carries over. Another great practice that I got from a yoga coach many years ago, she said to the group, how many of you have a gratitude journal? And I'd never heard of that before, and presumed that I was very grateful. There are a lot of things that I know that I have that others don't have, or that I've worked really hard to get, or that are just very precious in my life. But to literally acknowledge, you're laying in bed, you wake up, your eyes pop open, and my first thought would be, I'm late. I have so much to do. There's so much on my plate, or we have, what's on our list, or we need to build our list. And I'm trying to get in a better habit of just literally sitting up, taking a few moments to be grateful. I'm grateful I wake up to the trees outside. I'm grateful my dog and I wake up healthy. And it's super small and super simple. So even when I have an anxious thought or feeling coming in, I think of, my sister, or that person, that thought or that feeling, or situation that lights me up. And it really does help. And it's not ignoring the feelings of what's going on, but it's more having control and being present in the moment rather than reacting to everything that happens. So those are a couple of tricks that I've used over the years. And we're going to go back to Carissa for a couple more ideas.
I love your input, Burgundy. It's so valuable. Some additional self-care strategies that I've personally learned along the way. And before I actually go into this, I didn't put this in any of the slides, but I'm very open in sharing that I keep a mental health therapist that I see regularly for myself. And I see her twice a month. And I've been doing telehealth Zoom with her throughout all of this. And that has been pivotal in me keeping my sanity and being able to move through all of this. All of the stress that we're experiencing. So as over my time that I've worked with my therapist, she focuses on mindfulness and meditation as well. And one thing that she recommended was, and this can be used for kids or adults, but creating a sensory survival kit. And I love that concept because you can get really creative with it yourself. So a sensory survival kit can be a tiny little bag, a Ziploc bag, anything where you're gonna put some sensory things in. And the concept behind that is that in your sensory survival kit, you put one thing that you enjoy for all 5 of your senses. So one recommendation she had for me was for the sense of smell to put something in your survival kit that you enjoy smelling, maybe an essential oil, or I'm not sure, essential oil was the one that I chose. And then there was something that you can touch. Maybe that is a soft feather or a texture or a fidget, something that you enjoy touching. And then something for listening, that could be music or an audible book. Something you can taste if you enjoy sweet things or salty things. Have a tiny little sucker in your survival kit. And when you're experiencing moments of big feelings or overwhelmed, the sensory, just pull out something in your sensory kit or pull all of it out and just take a moment to enjoy all of those different sensations. And it really helps break that thought pattern that you're currently caught up in. And then you can redirect your thoughts and your emotions once you've kind of de-escalated yourself. Another great resource is the Calm app on, you can get it on any smartphone, Android or iPhone. Does it have a free version? There is a free version, and there's also a more intricate features on that if you want to pay for the version. And the Calm app, I really encourage everybody to download that because it's got amazing just guided meditations, and you can choose how long you want. If you only have 5 minutes, you can pull out that Calm app and just set that guided meditation for 5 minutes, and it has a whole library of different meditations you can choose from. My favorite feature on the Calm app is their sleep stories. And they have sleep stories for children or adults. And that's been a strategy to help me fall asleep. I would guess that many of us have had our sleep patterns interrupted during all of this. That's part of, dealing with stress and trauma. But the sleep stories take you on kind of a meditative journey. And the voices of the narrators are very calming and relaxing, and so that helps me fall right asleep if I'm having a hard time turning off the to-do list in my brain. And then movement, just we all are in the sport of movement, so if you are experiencing big feelings, take a quick movement break. Go for a hike outside, do a little bit of yoga. We've got lots of online resources for that. Or just quietly sit outside to change the scenery or the environment that you are currently in, removing yourself from that environment for a little bit and just kind of giving yourself a reset. So I hope that some of those suggestions will resonate with many of you. And then one final little strategy that I wanted to share, I'm just now thinking of, is that if you are feeling like you're in a heightened moment of anxiety or overwhelmed or stress, I also learned a technique to just stop when you recognize that that is what you're experiencing, to just let yourself pause for a moment, and you can just quietly look around in your environment and start labeling something that you see. So one example would be pick a color. For example, I'm going to look for everything green in my environment. And you can do this like just mentally in your brain. So even if you're in a meeting or if you're around other people and you want to kind of get more control over the feelings that you're currently in, you can just look around. Okay, I see a green wall, I see green grass, I see a green tree, I see a green leaf. And if you've gone through all of that color, then you can pick a shape. Let me look at everything in this environment that is a circle. And once you start going through that, again, it like interrupts your thought patterns and you can feel that sense of calm come down, and then just regroup and, you know, access other strategies to help you move forward however you need to. We're going to move on to just talking quickly about staff expectations. For those of you who don't know me, my company is Spectra Gymnastics. We exclusively work with children and adults experiencing learning challenges and developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities or delays. So with that said, I will be asking of my staff, like I mentioned before, to continue being socially responsible and following the social distancing guidelines outside of work so that you can remain healthy and be able to work at Spectra. Keeping up with our hygiene that we're learning so much about, or just we're getting extra practice with, prioritizing mental health and self-care, which is what we're focusing on today, and do what works best for you, and doing your best to arrive to work reflecting your best self. So those are some just very basic expectations that me and my team will be doing as we reopen the doors. And hopefully that will relate to some of your team as well. The next thing I wanted to touch on is the growth mindset and fixed mindset. And if you're not familiar with those concepts, this little image shows you pretty clearly what growth and fixed mindset are. And we do a lot of this teaching, I think, as coaches, no matter what student or athlete you're working with, we are naturally and often subconsciously teaching growth mindset to our athletes and recognizing when they have a fixed mindset and coaching them through how they're going to get through that and learn the skills that they're working towards or meeting their goals. But I think as a teacher or as a giver or as a provider, it's easier to teach that than to do it yourself. And I think understanding and just recognizing and honoring the stress that we are all personally under, and trying not to get into a fixed mindset cycle and thinking about things with the growth mindset, so that we can find new ways to run and operate our business in a healthy, thriving way. So when you have a growth mindset, your brain more easily goes to the I can thinking. I can learn anything I want. I can hear feedback. I can keep trying. I can try new things. And then I really love the one of challenges help me grow. And I think that is what resonates with me most up on this slide, is because through these challenges, there is so much potential and opportunity to grow personally and professionally. And I think if we can focus on that, we're going to be in a better mental state to figure out what that looks like for all of our individual businesses. I think it's very easy to go into a fixed mindset. Working with the students that enter Spectra, we have a lot of students that have low self-esteem. They are easily frustrated when something isn't perfect or when it doesn't go the right way. And with that, they want to give up. And so that's okay. There's a lot of strategies that we can use for our students to help them move past that. But I think it's important to recognize, if we ourselves as leaders are going into that fixed mindset, to just recognize that and remember that, you know, as leaders, we can work through these challenges and we can grow, and we have the skills within ourselves to do that. So just another perspective on growth mindset, looking for new opportunities and focusing on those rather than thinking my life is ruined, I give up. I know that I've definitely been in that situation over the last couple months, thinking, you know, everything's ruined. My business is it's completely gone. I give up. I've had several moments of that, but then being able to use these mindfulness strategies and all of these different practices that we're talking about to get out of that mindset and find a more healthy, positive way to be thinking about things. So when there's a will, there is a way. Here are just some opportunities that I am thinking about to thrive moving forward as far as our business operations go, that I am happy to share. So facility changes and procedures, we're all going through that right now. I think that is an opportunity. It feels, I know at least for me personally, it feels very overwhelming to have to think about implementing and creating all of these changes and procedures. Fortunately, all of our Facebook groups are really, really helpful. And I know that a lot of people have been supporting one another, sharing updated waivers, showing videos of what their gym looks like. And that's been great. And I really encourage all of us to keep reaching out on those social media platforms to connect and see what new opportunities we have. With the facility changes that we are currently going through here at Spectra, initially it felt very overwhelming. We've actually cleaned everything out we're basically on bare walls, redesigning our entire facility layout. And we only have about 4,000 square feet, so we're able to more easily do that. And when we first started going through that process, it felt very overwhelming for me. And I kind of started feeling like those triggers that I talked about earlier of, this is not the building or the facility or the business that I built, that I'm used to, that I'm comfortable in, and not wanting to accept that change. But now looking at it differently, I'm actually really excited because it's an opportunity for us to clean out all the clutter, do a super deep cleaning, fix every repair that's ever needed to happen and been neglected. And just thinking about that as, you know, with the growth mindset of these changes can be an opportunity for improvement, not just an extra piece of workload on the daily to-do list. Additionally, We are thinking about family-focused services, and I've talked on a couple other webinars over the last few weeks specifically on this topic. And if any of you would like more information on the specific things that we're doing for family services, feel free to email me directly or reach out to me on our social media groups, and I'm happy to share some of that with you. I didn't include it in the information today. I was just going to talk a little bit about it. But one thing that we do at Spectra is sibling classes, and that is just within the family dynamic. And often we will have one child who is experiencing or impacted by a learning delay or a disability, and then the other sibling may not be affected or be developing neurotypically. And so to help the siblings and the families develop a bond and grow play skills, we are bringing them into the gym and teaching those skills through our gymnastics facility. And thinking about other people's programs, we've had discussions on bringing in, offering whole family classes. So that would be maybe a mom, a dad, and a couple siblings, and you can run a small gymnastics class that can be adaptive and fun and recreational and engaging for the family as a whole, and also hopefully will help with some of the social distancing regulations and guidelines that we have to adhere to. If one of our thoughts was, if the parents are in the building working with their family, then the coaches can instruct the parents on how to physically spot their children, and take that risk and liability off of us as instructors and coaches. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for developing family-centered programs within our gym. We are also going through intense schedule modifications at Spectra. I'm sure a lot of people are, and that's just to adhere to social distancing guidelines. But through that, we are, continue to find new innovative programs to fit the needs and the new norm of the clients that we serve. So one thing that at Spectra we offered to our clients during all of our closures and when we were exploring the virtual aspect of services, the pre-recorded or live classes was not something that our families were extremely interested in, but we did keep hearing so much concern about children or kids not being able to keep up with the virtual side of school. So we offered virtual tutoring, and that has been really great to do. So thinking about how, when we reopen, how can we offer more educational based programs or offer tutoring services and combine that academic piece into the gym piece. So I've got some side conversations going on and side projects behind the scenes working more on that and what that's going to look like. We have a lot of really creative ideas. But I think this, again, is just our opportunity to be thinking outside of the box and reworking what used to work for us and finding new ways to serve our clients and keep our gyms and our programs profitable. Through all of this, more opportunities I like to think about is, and how we're helping each other is, because we have more of a therapeutic feel, I have been reaching out to local clinics and therapists, just asking them like how they're navigating through this. I think that at least for me, helps me feel more at peace or feel more confident if I notice that the decisions I'm making are lining up with like-minded professionals in my community. That just gives me more confidence that I'm doing the right thing as we navigate our new normals. Developing local youth programs, thinking about the education system, and then our industry social media groups are other great resources that we're always constantly sharing our ideas. So I think using all of these resources that are at our fingertips to think outside the box. So the next thing that I wanted to move on to was talking about how to handle trauma with parents. So I have a few scenarios, just a couple for handling scenarios with parents and also with children. So here's what we might expect, in my opinion. First, I think that knowing the signs of trauma that we showed earlier is really, really important, just to have that education so that as you're working either with parents or students, if you see behaviors or interactions that you aren't familiar with or that might seem out of the ordinary from that individual, thinking back to those signs of trauma and just going through, the thought process and your internal dialogue of understanding that these people are going through a hard time as well, and we don't know what that looks like for them as an individual. Also, recognizing symptoms in our clientele, like traumatic symptoms of trauma, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail. As we're interacting with parents, doing our very best to avoid personalizing their reactions that might catch us off guard or be surprising or offensive. We don't know what state of mind these parents are going to be in, but just think as staff and as a leadership team, it's really important for us to remember that these behaviors and interactions are not a personal attack. It might feel like that, but it's not a personal attack. We have to make sure that we have, our guard up and avoid personalizing that so that we can effectively problem solve and diffuse the situation. And also, if you're dealing with disgruntled parents, remembering to stay calm and non-reactive and unite with your team members or staff to support one another if something comes up at your facility. So let's go through some scenarios. One strategy, I'm sure many of us have heard of, active listening, but I think that's a really, really great skill to have when you're in customer service, and especially now not knowing what to expect from students or parents coming back. You can be an active listener, and oftentimes just going through those steps will help diffuse the situation and help calm the parent down. Here is some simple steps on, I borrowed this from the Center for Creative Leadership, but I really liked this graphic that they came up with: to pay attention, withhold judgment or don't take it personal, reflect, clarify, then summarize what you are hearing that parents say to you, and then share that. So, and then here's just a couple more. So I'm just wanting to give visual representation on different ways you can look and think about being an active listener. So with my staff, I want to teach a 4-step strategy because I like to really break things down into ways that we can remember all of these huge concepts. So I came up with this quick little 4-step strategy. So if you're in a challenging situation with a parent, step 1, pause, listen, be an active listener, and gesture. And what I mean by that is if you or a staff member is feeling uncomfortable with how a parent is engaging with you, first pause your body, don't react. I call it like stonewall and just go completely statue. But keep eye contact with that person and then gesture over to a staff member to come join you. And that staff member doesn't need to interact at all, but just having physical presence as a witness and as an extra support system should things escalate. So pause, listen to the parent actively, gesture for help, step 1. Step 2, I think it's important to validate what you're hearing that parents say. Step 3, do your best to diffuse the situation. And then step 4 is try to resolve the problem or offer a solution. So here is just breaking this down a little bit. Step 1, pause, listen, gesture. I like to say channel your inner calm, and we've talked about different ways that you can do that. Maintaining self-care throughout your day will help you be able to channel your inner calm much better when you are in these situations. Don't personalize the reaction, and then again, gesture for a staff member to help you for silent support. Validation, again, using your active listening skills. You can empathize calmly with the parent and then paraphrase. So a real simple example would be, I hear your concern, I understand, paraphrase it back to them to let them know that you are hearing what they're telling you. Be very neutral, summarize, and then we'll move on to step 3. Here's some things you can do to diffuse the situation. Again, just remaining calm is the number one thing that I find helpful in any situation, whether it's with a parent or a child. Paying attention to your own body language and your voice tone. We might be feeling triggered or offended or upset or insecure if a parent is not handling themselves well in the public. And so just being aware of your voice tone, and when you are communicating back at them, your tone is very monotone. You can drop your voice tone down, like reduce your voice volume, and speak a little bit softer. That can help diffuse the situation. Use really relaxed body language, and pay attention to that. If you've got your arms crossed up like this as you're listening, that parent might not feel as welcomed as if your shoulders are back and your hands are down. So using relaxed body language. If you need to, slowly walk your body into a less populated area at the gym so you can confidentially or privately speak with that individual. And again, if you've gestured for help, your staff members should come with you at that time as well. And then repeat the summary of your statements or your paraphrasing to the client. And then step 4, offering a solution. So after you've actively listened and heard what that parent is wanting to express, you can explain how you will find a solution. If you're not sure how you're going to find a solution, all coaches and instructors, you can say, I'm going to address this with my manager and we'll get right back to you because it's really important to me to find a solution for you. And just be reassuring to that parent or caregiver that we are all doing our very best and that the safety is our top priority for that family, and just reassuring them that you're taking all of this very, very seriously. So here's just one scenario I came up with. You have a disgruntled father who yells at you after class because a child got too close to his daughter during class. And he tells you that if his child catches the C, meaning COVID, I don't like to say the full word out loud, then it's all your fault. And that, we're not open yet, so that hasn't happened to any of us, fortunately, but I think that this could potentially be a real scenario. So if this was to happen, I would coach my team through, remembering those 4 steps. What are you gonna do in this moment? First, you're gonna pause, listen, and gesture for help. You're gonna validate that father's feelings. I understand that made you feel uncomfortable, diffuse the situation, and then offer a resolution. So in this specific scenario, I would, when I'm diffusing, I would tell that father, you know, I hear your concerns. It's really important to me that we work together to find a solution. And then next time, this is how I can try to do things differently, and ask how that, you know, how does the dad feel about that? Do you feel like that would be an appropriate way for me to handle the situation? Here's another potential scenario of, you know, just thinking about families coming back into our world, possibly being traumatized. Maybe you or an instructor witnesses a mother arriving to class yelling at her child, and you notice that the other people around you are feeling threatened or uncomfortable. And observing the body language of the child, they may be withdrawn and timid and scared. So how would you handle that situation with your 4 steps? Again, the pause, gesture for your staff to help you. I would talk to the validation. I would say to that mom, you know, it looks like your day's off to a rough start, and I'm really sorry about that, and I'm here to help you. What can I do to help you? How can I support you? And then diffuse the situation. So in this example, I could say, you know, teacher Sarah is going to take Johnny into class so that I can speak with you in person if you'd like to talk to me about what happened. And so just offering that support, and then working to resolve the situation. You know, assure the mom that her son's going to be taken care of, and offer that mom a break. You know, let us take care of Johnny. We're going to have him for class. Why don't you go across the street, get a coffee, or, you know, go for a little walk, and offer that mom a self-care little tip while her child's under your care. I think it's really important, just again, to remember that as we're all coming out of this, we're all feeling different emotions. So remember to show compassion and kindness. Don't take things personal, and use all of your skills. Use your self-care strategies, use your communication skills, your customer service skills, and then also your teacher skills to work directly with the students. Here are some things to think about as far as bringing students and children back into our gym. I am guessing that we are going to witness a loss of skills or regression, that many students might have difficulty with attention or experience more inattention. There might be more feelings of irritability. Children might feel fearful or mistrusting. We don't know. I mean, in my opinion, children are like sponges, and for the last 3 months, they have been probably hearing the news as parents are watching the news, or overhearing parents' side conversations, and we don't know what that impact is having on the children right now. And so as they're being expected to come back out of shelter in place, there might be a level of fear or mistrust, and that's okay. We might also see confusion and depression and dysregulation. And so thinking about the specific community of learners that we work with, these are some really big ones that I think, that there will likely be other things that will come up as you work with the students that are in your facility. So just a couple little tips on how to best support your students. Be an observer and notice signs of withdrawal or emotional changes. Keep things light and fun. If you need to, go back to the basics. We're gonna expect some skill regression in many areas possibly. You can increase your praise and positive reinforcement with your students to build up their confidence and behavioral momentum. And using emotional or child-centered language, I think, can be really, really helpful for these students. And then again, just modeling your best self to the students and showing them that, you know, you're not feeling afraid being here in the facility, and hopefully just, you know, modeling that positive behavior will help the students readjust and reintegrate back into this environment. So talking or thinking specifically about regression, I expect to see a loss of, I think a lot of us will expect to see a loss of physical skills, whether you're working with a preschool student or a competitive gymnast. This 2 to 3 months out of the gym, we will see a physical regression, so just expect that. A loss of academic skills or regression in academic skills, as well as social skills, and possibly regression in being able to access healthy coping strategies for that child. With these specific points right here, if we are handling a loss of physical skills, I think we should go back to the basics. Repetition is a great way to learn for any learner, and then go back to teaching skills and drills until your athletes and students feel more confident relearning some of the things that they were currently working on. The regression in academic skills, I think that's an opportunity for us to implement tutoring services or offer that service, as well as the new program ideas that I mentioned to help support that. There's lots of fun ways that you can incorporate education, academics with movement. I think the gymnastics environment is a really, really special, unique place for many types of learning to take place. With the loss of or regression in social skills for me and my staff, we will be going back to the Spectra Abilities platform and looking up our social games and activities and making and building our lesson plans to really focus on that social development for our learners. And then also teaching coping strategies. So again, me and my staff will be going through our Spectra Abilities platform and reviewing teaching strategies and different therapeutic and emotional regulation strategies that we have in our library that we can access in the moment should and navigate things safely and effectively as things arise. And if I have time, I do plan on showing you guys just a couple examples of what I'm talking about in the Spectra Abilities platform. The inattention, again, lots of this information is in our Spectra Abilities platform, but with the inability to focus, we're going to reduce our expectations of that child. We're going to shorten the duration of our activities. So if a child's used to spending 15 minutes on the trampoline, maybe we're gonna drop that down to 7 minutes to start. And with that, we'll also increase the use of our visual supports and use that as strategies to help our students focus. And with that, just remembering that when these children re-enter and they are having a difficult time focusing, that is not intentional. That is an after effect of trauma and stress. So just really remembering to honor that child's experience and not make them feel bad about any limitations they're experiencing right now, and to do everything you can as a teacher to break down your expectations or change your expectations and simplify things to set that student up for success. I also expect that many students will have difficulty remembering instructions, and again, relating that back to possible trauma effects. So our strategies for that is using visual schedules, using very clear, simple instructions. So only giving a couple words as an instruction, rather a big long paragraph or story. You can also use written instructions. We have little dry erase boards, and so maybe if somebody's having a hard time remembering what they're doing in class, just write out the words for every different station that you're working on, and that then the student feels better about, they can just reference that written visual support rather than having to constantly ask their teacher or somebody else what they're supposed to do. So just make it easy for them. And then difficulty staying on track or with a group. This will probably be very, very common with probably lots of young learners, preschool and early elementary students, in addition to neurodiverse individuals. So we have a lot of positive reinforcement strategies in addition to the many visual supports that can be implemented, and those have been very effective in helping students stay on track with a group. With irritability and aggression, just knowing that lots of students might be easily frustrated coming out of this for a lot of different reasons, that's okay. Do your best to set your students up for success, be encouraging. You can use able-based language, and that's going back to the growth mindset and just reminding your students or that child that you are able to do this, that you are strong, that you can learn, you can keep trying, and just feed them and fill them up with all of those affirmations until that frustration decreases a little bit. With low self-esteem, in the Spectra Abilities platform, we have some resources for teaching positive self-talk through scripts, of just feeding them things like, I can do this, I am strong. And we also have different activities and games that you can incorporate that will target this positive self-talk and help improve that person's self-esteem over time. You can also highlight proud moments often and celebrate small successes. And then finally, emotional outbursts. I have a little video clip that I can show you guys again, time permitting, about how to handle emotional outbursts. And again, that's all in our Spectra Abilities platform. When dealing with depression and withdrawal, I think that one idea I came up with, and this would be more appropriate for older kids, but you can spend a little bit of time doing a daily or weekly reflection with them before they leave. And then make notes in your staff portal about what your observations were. If you notice a child is showing signs of depression and withdrawal, just make notes of that and tell your manager to bring that to their attention. But focusing on those positive successes before that student leaves can be really, really effective and helpful. I like to call it proud moments. So sometimes before my students leave, I just say, hey, we're gonna check in and I want everybody to share one proud moment with me, one thing that made you feel good about yourself in class today. And we go through and we share a proud moment, and that's how I like to end things, so that they're focusing on the positive things as they go back home, and we don't know what home life looks like for everybody. For students that are withdrawn, I think it's really important to use a calm, quiet demeanor towards that person. Meet the students where they are. You can follow their lead and join in their preferences and interests, and just ask them what might make them feel good. So for example, if I have a student who is coming back into the gym, they're having a hard time making eye contact with me, they won't share any ideas of what they're wanting to do, I'm just going to say, great, let's just be together. And we can just walk through the gym together. And if something looks fun, let's go try that together. And see if you can take a slower approach to re-engaging them, specifically if they are showing signs of withdrawal. As far as dysregulation goes, we see this a lot with children impacted or children who have high sensory needs. And so this is something that we are very comfortable and familiar dealing with, but I expect the level of dysregulation for many of our students to look differently or be higher than we're familiar with. So here's a couple examples. Sensory overload. If you notice the little boy in the picture in the left, he's covering his ears, and many children who are experiencing sensory overload will do that, and that's a really clear sign that, oh my gosh, this is too much for them. And then instantly, coach or instructor can make a decision of how to reduce the sensory stimulation that's going on in the environment. You can limit noise, you can lower the lights or go into a different room in the facility where you can have lower lights or fewer people, trying to find a quiet space and giving that child calming activities. Maybe that's flipping through a book or building a tower with a couple Legos. Or you could have that sensory survival kit. Maybe you're smelling silly scents or blowing scented bubbles with a child, but trying to decrease that overload with them. So then sensory seeking students, when they re-enter the gym, if they're sensory seeking, and we can see that maybe maybe this person is having a hard time sticking with one activity, or maybe they're bouncing their body uncontrollably on the trampoline or using equipment that might look dangerous. That's often with our students because their body's craving specific sensory inputs, and we try to meet those needs. So when you, if you're experiencing a student that is very dysregulated, it's great to use highly structured activities that have proprioceptive and vestibular benefits. And when I pull up the Spectra Abilities platform, I can show a few to you guys. If a student is having a difficult time with focusing with regards to dysregulation, another strategy is using visual timers, and then all of the visual supports like our visual schedules, hands, feet, arrows. Again, I'm going to show you a couple examples in the Spectra Abilities platform. And then emotional dysregulation or emotional outbursts. Just oftentimes we will have kids that kind of go through highs and lows. So maybe when they enter the building, they're really, really happy. And then after about 10 or 15 minutes of being in the gym, all of a sudden they reach a low and their body slows down. They have different preferences of the activities they're choosing, and then they go back up to a high again. So when you're seeing that roller coaster wave, you can use some calming strategies. You can find a safe space, de-escalate that student using all of the emotional regulation strategies that we have in Spectra Abilities. And then if possible, trying to resume back to class and ending on a positive note. So that was everything that I had put together for our PowerPoint. And I had scheduled this session to go till 1:30, but we will not be going that long. I'm going to take just a few minutes to show you some specific features in the Spectra Abilities platform as they relate to some of the content that I just talked about. And then once I'm done with that, if there's any questions or comments, I am happy to show you guys or answer all of those. So I'm going to pull out of that and get my curriculum up. I closed out of it to make sure that the streaming on this didn't get interrupted. So I apologize for not having it totally ready. So one of the things that I wanted to go through, again, as it relates to what we were talking about in your Spectra Abilities platform, is the therapeutic resources. And When we're thinking about dysregulation or emotional regulation or a child having a hard time sticking with a group, there's lots of different things that you can do, but one of the, let's see, I'm trying to remember where I put it in my sensory breaks. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that one because I cannot quite find out where I put that. I'm so sorry. We will go into recreational. And then what was that game, Sarah? Emotional regulation games here. So this is just one example. Oh, is it not in there? There it is. We're gonna go on view mode. So when you go into your platform, this is one specific activity that any of our instructors can do to check in with their student and just do an emotional check-in, ask how they're doing. You can do this before class, you can do this after class, but it's a great, just really short activity that can help students help identify what emotions they're experiencing right now and then move forward. Is it not gonna play the video for me? Oh, it's because it thinks I'm trying to edit. There we go.
On your heart, and close your eyes, and we're gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna fill up your belly and your brain and blow it out. Good, and then do one more. Good. And then I want you to think about how your body feels right now. How do you feel in your heart, Ozzy?
So excited. So that's just me showing you how you can go through a little check-in, have the kids touch their heart, do a little breathing, and talk about how we're feeling. So that's one resource that all my team members can use. Some other great resources that we are going to have our entire team just review is going through all of these educational courses. So some specific ones that I'm going to reassign to my team are our behavioral course that talks a lot about different behavioral strategies, how to handle meltdowns versus tantrums, any bolting behaviors, protesting, emotional outbursts. So if you see here, I'll play this just quick little clip.
Many of your students will
Oops, sorry about that.
experience difficulty controlling their emotions. Emotional outbursts might range from small reactions of yelling and screaming or escalate to physical aggression. It's really important to know that during an emotional outburst, you need to keep your interactions with that student to a minimum. Vocal outbursts of yelling and screaming is a common form of reacting to big emotions. Physical aggression of hurting other people is a form of emotional outburst. And then there is self-injurious behavior, which is when a student will injure themselves when they're feeling a big emotion. Oftentimes, self-injurious behaviors will include a child hitting their head against a wall, or biting their hand or arm, or hitting themselves in the head. When an emotional outburst is prolonged and lasts several minutes, it's very important to understand that during that time, that person's brain cannot process new information. As an instructor, You must remain calm until that student begins to de-escalate and calm down themselves. Do not try to problem solve or communicate with the student during their outburst. If you are managing an emotional outburst, it's always important to first consider safety precautions. Protect yourself, other people, and your student. Avoid any physical contact with that individual if at all possible. Also, keep your body in a physical proximity of about 2 feet distance from you and the individual having an outburst. Be sure that you remain calm during the entire time, and once that student has regulated, you can then talk to them, try to problem solve, and end your class on a positive note. If possible, first try to take your student into a safe space and remove them from the triggering environment that they're currently in. Stay with your student until they are calm. You can give your student calming activities such as reading a book or coloring. And then once that student is calm, and I like to make sure that they remain calm for at least 2 minutes before resuming physical activity. But if their body is re-regulated, you can talk to them quickly about having smaller reactions and discuss what needs to be done in order to resume their gymnastics schedule, and then go back into the gym and try again. Always do your best to try to end class on a positive note.
So that's just one little example of a clip in our behavior course for staff training. And if any of you are doing the Spectra Abilities trial promotion going on for $9.99 a month, this is a great time to get to preview this content and see if it's something that would be helpful or effective for what your business operations are at your facility. So those are just a couple little tips and tricks. As we plan our reopening, you can see there's lots of different categories for different videos and games with instructions on all of these different social skills. There's also the recreational side where we've got a variety of different games, social problem-solving games. I haven't added those videos in yet. Emotional regulation games. And then we've got the therapeutic side of, you know, how to use visual schedules, any teaching strategies, using visual supports, and then also transitioning. So that is all I'm going to show you right now. And I'll go ahead and just open it up if anybody has any questions.
Carissa, that was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I wasn't going to throw my video up there, but that was amazing on so many levels. Even just starting your webinar with us, with calming, even just grounding ourselves, made us much more able to listen. Yeah. I'm going to take off that background. I wasn't actually going to.
Oh, I love it. I love
my
it.
Background? Okay.
Oh, it's great.
I have found that there's been so much information coming at my brain. It's like a fire hose of ideas and questions and whatnot that I'm finding it hard to pay attention to people while they're talking, and I need to go back afterwards and listen. And this time, because you started with a grounding activity and some nice calming deep breaths and stuff, I stayed with you for the whole conference. And usually I find myself kind of working at the side or whatever while I'm waiting. And this time I stayed right there the whole time. So that showed me that my focus level, my energy level is way too high. And yes, interrupting my sleep and all those things that you just said. Yeah. And so a simple strategy. And that was only using it for the first time, not using it like as a strategy throughout my day now. So just having used it that one time, that I was able to stay focused and pay attention to what you were talking about. And therefore I got so much more out of it. And I don't feel like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to replay that one tonight because I missed half of what they said.
Right.
Yeah, I found that very helpful for even just for me, never mind for what I want all my staff. There's a bunch of my staff in here, but for my staff, I want to be able to share this with them afterwards. But for myself, it was like, oh, that's very evident that I went for a 10K walk this morning too. I decided that my day is getting, I have fallen off the cliff for sure. I've gained 15 pounds, which is not good. And I have emotional outbursts, which is not good. Right. I was listening to your story and I thought, it might even just be interesting just to journal what has happened and acknowledge that it's normal to feel that way. Look at everything that's happened. Not only have we had to close 4 businesses, we had a serious flood that took out one of the locations that's now been under heavy duty reconstruction because the flood went under our building. Like the problem went under the building. So they had to tear up the floor to fix the problem.
Oh my gosh.
So, and then, yes, there's been a bunch of other things that have happened and some important birthdays that went past. And my mom's in a retirement home, so none of us can see her. And when I started to think, as you were listing your things, I thought, I feel pressure that I'm not supposed to feel that way. I'm supposed to be the one in charge, and I'm supposed to not show any cracks and to be beyond that, right? I'm supposed to teach other people how to manage all that. But just even listing it like that and acknowledging it and then just saying, it's normal to feel that way. It's okay. Yeah. But I'm not some sort of weird person because I feel this way, So exactly. It was a huge help just for me even.
Good. Yeah. Well, I know I share that same experience of I feel I'm supposed to be the strong one and the leader, and showing vulnerability is not, always acceptable or something we're comfortable with, but I'm working on that. And and just honoring our experiences. And once you can just say it's okay for me to feel this way, then it doesn't stick with you as long. It's easier to let it go. It's easier to move on through your day. But I've learned for me personally, if I'm burying all of that, it's gonna re-trigger me in a week, and I'm gonna get even more frustrated than if I hadn't have just tried to suppress what my experience was.
Right. I've always known that about myself, that I manage stress very well in the moment, and I kind of fall apart later. The problem is that this has been sustained. So at some point, I have to deal with it, and I can see that I have not been. So I'm one day into doing 10K every morning, but that peace and quiet this morning and then starting off with that calming activity made a big difference.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah. Well, that was fun. Thank you for co-hosting with me.
You do have a question. Great information that is very applicable with tips that we can use when we reopen. Thank you for sharing your expertise. We have a group here watching and are excited to share the replace with those who could not make it. You rock.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. That's Nadine. That's Nadine. Hi, Nadine. We love you.
I know that one thing I want to put up on social media right now is just creating a library of social distancing games, because games are often so much about cooperation and building friendships and building relationships. And I was like, when I started going through all of our games to get ready for reopening and for camp, I went, we're going to have to rethink a lot of the games that we normally built in. And even things like crafts, like the supplies can't be shared, things like that. So just rethinking some of it and seeing it, like you said, as an opportunity for new things to replace it rather than grieve it, let it go.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm excited to share and collaborate with others specifically on that social distancing and game piece, because my brain's been going crazy as well of, okay, I'm flooded with ideas of how we're going to approach all of this. And so I'm excited.
And then taking all of that though, and putting it into a plan almost feels overwhelming. We
Yeah.
we invested in these amazing yoga mats that we found that have characters, they're for kids and they have characters printed on them. And the kids will keep their yoga mat throughout their rotation. So they
Brilliant.
have their very own yoga mat at every event, and we've figured out how to use that yoga mat at every event to reduce their exposure. And they're cute. Like they have
Where did you
robots on
find
them and
them?
sunshines and all kinds of really cool things. But let's face it, with fabric paint, you could do it on probably any yoga mat.
Yeah.
Although the alcohol might take it right off that you have to clean it with.
Right.
But anyway, we found some that were very child-centered. And I thought they'll be handy when well, if they last the entire year, when we're back to not having to social distance, I can still see lots of things to use them for. So I saw them as an investment. But now, even like on the
Yeah.
vault, their yoga mat will get put on, they take their turn. The next yoga mat gets pulled on, they take their turn. So they're still getting to
Brilliant.
use. Yeah, I think when we looked at it, we went, they're touching nothing except bars.
Yeah.
I'm down to one event that, and we're gonna sanitize before touching the bars. But even the bars I've split in half. So there's a red side and a blue side, and we've got 3 sets. So they each have their own rail to use. So it's pretty minimal, but yeah, I found so much of that very helpful. And just, I know I've taken their subscription for Spectrabilities. If you haven't, you're nuts, because it's $9.99. And I defy you to find anything that's going to give you that kind of information for $10. Because even if the kids are not experiencing neurological issues, every child is going to have some aspects of what you call dysfunction, right? Like
Right.
they're not used to normal schedules. Their parenting has been all over the map. They're been stuck inside. We did go away for the Saturday. We went up north just for the day, and we noticed the first thing, there was like lots where the parents were like, no, you can't leave the lot. And then other parents were like, there were groups of 10, 15 kids all bicycling together, and we're like, oh, that's not okay. And just the perceptions of how, across the board, our families are going to be experiencing this in so many different ways, that we need to be ready for that wide array of feelings.
100%.
Yeah. So just in talking through them like that, I thought was very helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your feedback and collaboration and making this possible.
Oh, anytime. I love this kind of stuff. Learning never stops. And every single time I participate in some sort of session, I pick up something that takes me a little bit further in an area. So every single time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yay.
Growth
Excited.
mindset.
Yeah. So the video will be there, and I'll forward it off to you as well. And it'll also be available on MGIO until May 31st. But it's going to be in Spectrabilities. You can also grab your subscription there. It's at leaplearn.net. If you haven't been there, you need to go visit it, because you can get any of the subscriptions right now for $9.99 a month, which is crazy good. And you can also get an individual person one, like if you just want it for yourself, and not necessarily, like if you're listening in on this and your club doesn't have that, but you would like it for yourself, there is an individual subscription now available, which is amazing too. So yeah, so I would absolutely I already have, but I highly recommend that you do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sure I'll see you soon. And you guys, everybody have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye.